What is up, Nico Nation? Welcome back to the channel, the Draft Guys podcast with Peyton and Nico on your platform providers for podcasts. And today it's a special day. Division Draftables. We've been hyping up this series for a very long time. Of course, it is the inaugural episode of season 2. This is our NFL draft series where we highlight the outlook of your favorite NFL team as we transition kind of out of this draft cycle for 2026 and look towards training camp and ultimately preseason football. I am your host, Niko Chambers, Nico the Draft Guy, you can call me, alongside my co-host, Pete Dunn. Pete Dunn, how's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm stoked for this one. This is going to be really fun. Like you said, we get really, really excited for this season. This is kind of our middle ground between the draft and the regular season. This kind of bridges the gap for us as we head into, like preseason training camp, all of the things that end up coming up pretty soon. So I'm really excited for this one. Really excited to get into this for sure.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, we did it last year, one of our first video series that we did here on YouTube. Now we're a year in. We've done so many videos, so doing this again, it's a really fun thing that we do. And I'll just ask you, Pete Dunn, can you explain to the fans who don't know about Division Draftables what exactly we are trying to accomplish with the series?
Yeah, so like obviously the name entails, we go division by division and we go over each team's draft class. It is a team-centric episode. And then we kind of categorize it by the division. So today you will hear about the NFC East. You'll hear about each team in the NFC East, our favorite picks, the things that we could see a couple of years from now being the favorite picks. We split them up into kind of an award show, kind of in a way for the team's drafts. We'll give it a grade and we'll talk about it. If you are a fan of any NFL team, this is absolutely the series for you. We will go in depth on the draft class and give you an outlook for the next year.
Of course, this is the NFC East episode, episode 1 of this great series that we do. That was a great introduction to what really Division Draftables is, and we'll kind of jump straight into it with the New York Giants draft. So they had 7 picks in 2026, and you see the grades there. First time you've seen any of our grades. I gave it an A. Pete Dunn gave it an A minus. Pete Dunn, you see the picks on the screen and how we had them ranked. How do you feel about the Giants draft?
Yeah, this is pretty crazy looking at how similar our rankings were for each of these players that they drafted. Really, really interesting. A lot of guys I really liked here. I think it was a really, really good draft. This will probably be one of my favorites in the cycle. An A minus is a hard thing to achieve, and it really helped having both of those first round picks. I think they nailed both of them at both spots. I think they took the right players. They got a falling Arvell Reese at 5, got a really good player to put on that offensive line and protects Jackson Dart at 10. And I liked what they did on the board too. I think Colton Hood could arguably be the best corner on that team year one, and Malachi Fields can give a more of a stable presence in that receiving room that they've kind of struggled with for a while. And the reason, I gave it an A minus instead of a B plus, the JC Davis pick in the 6th round, I have a lot of faith in. I think he's someone that can develop into that tackle position. If Maui Noah ends up playing on the inside, JC Davis can maybe play right tackle. I'm not sure how they're going to work around that. JC Davis, I just love the way he was in pass protection this last season at Illinois. Really like the things he showed, and I really, really like that pick.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me that differentiates maybe the A plus grade. I'm so high on them. I mean, look at what they got. For me, they got 3 first rounders in terms of my grades within their first 3 picks. And of course, those are some high picks as well. You can't really go wrong with Maui Noah, but I think that for me, if they took Caleb Downs at 10 instead of Maui Noah, that would elevate it to an A plus. I just think that the ceiling is a little bit higher. We'll talk about Maui Noah in the next portion when we look at the depth chart about where he really fits in. But I just think Caleb Downs, man, he would have been a generational player. And I really love Arvell Reese. And people are going to be like, whoa, we don't like him. He's an edge rusher. You took another defensive lineman. I don't think so. I think he's going to play well for this team. And I think that he can be a really, really, really good linebacker. As we look into really the depth chart and we kind of differentiate where these guys will play. So, of course, the depth chart here, they do have Arvell Reese playing that will spot. I think it makes sense with Edmonds and them bringing him in. Jack Kelly was a guy for BYU that they kind of bring in. He can be that backup middle linebacker. But I'll switch really quickly to that offensive line, Pete Dunn. They gave Jermaine Illuminor that 3-year, $39 million contract, presumably to play that right tackle spot. So what does this mean for Maui Noah? Does the depth chart have it right?
I do think they have it right, at least for starters. I think that the really interesting here, we talked about JC Davis. I think there's a real opportunity for considering the injury history that Andrew Thomas has had over these last few years. JC Davis is going to play at left tackle, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to take over that role. I think Marcus and Bo being at their backup right tackle position is interesting. I actually think he's more of an interior player. I think that he's going to see the field a lot more this season. Maui Noah can play all 4 positions, I think. I think he can play anywhere. but I think he's a better guard than he is a tackle. I think his ceiling's higher, obviously more valuable at tackle, but they have both of their tackles solidified. Get the best four on the field, best five offensive linemen on the field, and Maui Noah, I think, is the best right guard on this team immediately.
100%. You see at the changes, of course, everybody in yellow is the free agents, and all of that purple pink color is the rookies. You see, they did a lot of work on that interior D line, if you will, with the nose tackle, defensive tackle, even that defensive end spot in their 3-4. Is anybody standing out in terms of the free agents that they got?
Yeah, DJ Reader, I think, was probably one of my favorite signings for this team. I think it was really, really interesting. A guy that kind of has tailed off in his stint with the Lions, but played really good with the Bengals before that. And I think this was a guy that I was surprised did not get more attention in the defensive tackle market this year. Went to a really good spot, obviously with the trade. And so I think there's a room for him to kind of take over that role. And I think I'm out of all of their signings, that's the one I'm the most intrigued about.
Think the other big thing, thinking about where does Malachi Fields truly fit in here? They have the Slayton contract till 2028. You have Neighbors till 2029. So kind of fitting him in. I don't think he's going to play a slot role where Calvin Austin can play. So you're going to have to see who really wins that battle. They, of course, also did sign Darnell Mooney. We'll move in here to P. Dunn's five, if you will, the superlative five that we talked about at the beginning of the episode. He's going to go through them right now and tell the Giants fans what they should be looking forward to.
Yeah, my favorite pick was Maui Noah. I think it was the best value. I think that there was just we talked about it the whole draft cycle. You and me had countless conversations. I had a feeling he was going to go like true trenches, not right. Reese is kind of fringe trenches. I knew he was going to go true trenches. It was one of these picks, and I think that's why they ended up going there instead of Downs. There was a mentality aspect that he wanted to bring with this first draft, and I love it. I love the thought process behind it. I love the player. He matches exactly what they're trying to build there. Draft Diamond, I talked about it before, JC Davis. He's the reason he fell is because I don't think there's actually a lot of upside in the run game with him. But you'd rather have an offensive tackle that's good in pass pro and bad in run game than good in run game and bad in pass pro, especially at that left tackle position, which is where he is. With a left tackle, you get in the sixth round that can pass protect the way he does. I really like that value. So that was the draft diamond. I could absolutely see him developing down over the next few years. Best value would be Malachi Fields for me. I think that just getting him in the position you got him in at that range, I know that there isn't really a solidified spot for him. They're going to make it work because I think he's the third best receiver on the team right now. And you get your three best out there. Neighbors can play anywhere. Malachi Fields is going to play on the X, and that's where they're going to put him. They're going to put them there and figure everything else out. Top sleeper, Colton Hood. Like I said, you could see this and be like, oh, it's Colton Hood. Like nobody's sleeping on Colton Hood. I really think he could be the best corner on this team, and that's what I mean by sleeper. I think I think the grade and range they got him in, he's better than, and the value they got him at that position, he's going to outperform. I really like the way Colton Hood fits into this defense, and then year one impact is obviously Arvell Reese. The things he's going to do on that defensive side of the ball, the way Harbaugh is going to use him, I think it's going to be awesome.
Feel the same way about Arvell Reese. I have him in a few spots here. My favorite pick of the draft, I think he's a true linebacker, and with the ability to develop him into some type of edge rusher, it's uncanny that you have a player like that who falls at five. I'm so glad that they took him. Harbaugh's going to love him. Of course, I think in terms of draft diamond and the draft diamond superlative, it could be a few things. So obviously, number one, the best career out of this team's draft class. Number two, a player who will develop into a star over time. And number three, a player who will stand out most when we look back at this draft in 5 years. And I think that he fits all three of those. He's going to be my draft diamond. Best value, Malachi Fields. I mean, what do we have, Malachi Fields? I had a second round grade on him. He goes mid third round. He's going to fall into the best value slot for me. Top sleeper, same thing with you. I feel like Colton Hood is being slept on. I thought he was slept on the entire draft cycle. The fact that he goes here, unbelievable. Year one impact. I think Maui Noah playing that right guard slot is going to be a lot of fun. Pete, are there any other remarks on this Giants team?
I don't think so. It's a really, really good draft, man. They should be really happy with what they did.
New regime with Harbaugh, building with Jackson Dart. A lot to be happy about if you're a Giants fan. We'll move to the Washington Commanders, a large part of our fan base is Commanders fans. So the main question here with the storyline is this roster good enough to sustain the NFC East? And you have the picks on screen. They only had six this year. They didn't have that many last year either. Pete, how do you feel about this draft?
I'm a little confused on how I feel about this draft. I'll tell you what, I am really nervous it's going to be a one-man draft and it's going to be a one-player draft. But the good thing is that you got my number one player in the class in Sonny Styles. I think he's the best. I think he was the best player in the class. He's a generational level linebacker prospect, in my opinion. And so that's it's carrying most of that B minus grade. I do like the Joshua Joseph selection. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that helped contribute to this, but overall, I'm a little worried it's just gonna be a one-man draft.
Of course, when you look at the screen, no round two, no round four pick. That's from the Lermy Tunsil trade, of course. So you're trying to think about how that works into the system of our grading. They had some guys. I was a little bit higher on some of these guys. I was high on Katron Allen. He's going to be one of those steals that you get in the sixth round. I think Antonio Williams can be a player. Wasn't very high on him in the draft process. I think they reached for him. But with the depth chart and how we look at it, it's going to factor into my B grade. We'll look at the depth chart right away. The big thing that stands out is what they did in free agency. Big, big, big free agency with a pass rush overhaul. Pete Dunn, what do you have to say about that?
They had to, man. That was the big thing is this defense was just so bad last year. It was so bad on pretty much every level, and they went and they really heavily invested, like you said, in that pass rush and being able to get to the quarterback. I like what they did in the secondary. I think Sonny Styles is the best player on that team right now, I think, in my opinion, or on that defensive side of the ball, which says a lot as a rookie. But again, building around him, just doing your best to just make it to where you give Jaden a chance. That's kind of what they did a couple of years ago when they had success. The defense was not good, but it gave him a chance and it let Jaden Daniels kind of control the game and take over the game. That's what this team needs to try to do this year.
I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, all the money that they had, they were like top five in terms of spending and just in terms of salary cap going into it. They did nothing for that offensive side of the ball. Really, at running back, they did add Rashad White. I didn't think it was notable enough. But receiver, most notably, bringing in Diami Brown, that's about it. They re-signed Treylon Burks, and then you're going to draft Antonio Williams. Is this receiver room, good enough to sustain?
Absolutely not. Even though Treylon Burks probably had the best year of his career last year with the Commanders and they decided to bring him back, he can't be your wide receiver too. Antonio Williams was not didn't make my top 150. I know I was lower on him than some other people in this cycle, but even you had him outside your type 100. And so I just again, Terry McLaurin was good when he's healthy, but people forget he was an old prospect when he got drafted, and he's not a young player anymore. This is I think 31, 32-year-old receiver. And so I mean, this guy's got some years on him. It's not a good running back room. It's not a good tight end room. It's not a good offensive line, and it's not a good receiver room. And so it's a tough roster right now.
We'll jump to that running back room really quick before we switch gears here. You got Bill, you got Rashad White, you got Katron Allen, you got Jerome Ford. Those are your four. Nobody's really going to be the alpha. I think they're going to split it pretty evenly. Can you give the fans an idea of what they should be doing in terms of how do they split this up?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing is Rashad White was a backup in Tampa Bay, right? He was the second best running back on that team, and they pushed him out the door to get somebody younger in that room. You kind of liked what you saw last year from this room, at least a little bit. For a seventh round pick, Krosky Merritt was better. There was a lot of hype for him going into the year, and it didn't pan out that well. I think all you hope is that the upside of Katron Allen actually gets tapped into, and he does become someone that is a better draft pick than that 6th round value. But I wish I could hype it up more than I can. Like it's a tough look. It's a tough look for this room right now.
They didn't do much on offense at all. Just Chiga Conquos. That's pretty much it. Is the only notable guy that they bring in. Maybe Brandon Ayuk can add to this roster, but I don't even know if you want to go down that rabbit hole. If you will, we'll move on here to Pete Dunn's five superlatives. Pete Dunn, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Sonny Styles could pretty much be everyone for this category, and I really was considering doing that. I just obviously favorite pick, favorite player in the draft. I think he's a really, really good player. I could not talk about enough about how I think he's going to be a 10-year guy for this team, best player on the team. I think he will be a really, really great player in the NFL for a long time. So best value, favorite pick, go to him. Draft diamond. Katron Allen, I think, is the guy that has the best shot to do this outside of the guys named Sonny Styles. I think there is the upside there. And top sleeper, Joshua Josephs, I think he's so developmental that he needs some time, but down the road, I could see him contributing. And Antonio Williams, again, this should be Sonny Styles. I wanted to put in for pretty much everyone, but for the diversification aspect, Antonio Williams, that receiver room is just so open that I think he has an opportunity to contribute immediately.
I absolutely feel the same way there. I had him as my year one impact at the same time. Obviously, I just think that, yeah, he can be the alpha at that slot position where Terry McLaurin has been up and down. They gave him that big contract. We don't know about what's going on there. Treylon Burks is just going to be that receiver kind of on the outside who can just be there, kind of take up space. But I do think Antonio Williams can get things done. Same thing with Pete Dunn. Favorite pick is going to be Sonny Styles. For me, the draft diamond, Sonny Styles. You're going to look back at this draft and all those three criteria I talked about. He's going to be the best player in this draft. He's going to have the best career out of anybody in this draft class, and he's going to become the star in the NFL. That's Sonny Styles for you. Best value, Joshua Josephs, man. Number 59th overall on my big board. He was my number 10 overall edge, and he ends up being the 19th edge taken. Round 5 pick, 147 overall. It's just, that's value. And they desperately needed young edge rushers. They got a bunch in free agency, but go get you a guy in round 5 when you only have 6 picks all day long. That has to be there. Sleeper, same feeling right there about Kaytron Allen. I do think that he can fill up this room. I don't know about the share. It could be 25, 25, 20. You don't know what it can be, but he can definitely stand out. And I don't know, man, for fantasy purposes, you may want to look out for Kaytron Allen. Pete Dunn, what hope do you have for this Commanders team really in the future?
You've got a really great quarterback. But other than that, it's looking rough. I don't love the way that this team drafted this year. I didn't love the way they drafted last year. Here, I'll say for hope, the hope is that, next year you have some draft picks. You have more draft picks than you did this year. These last 2 years, you've kind of been fighting with one hand in the draft. You haven't had the amount of draft picks that the normal team has. You haven't had a second round pick either of these last years. Last year, I don't even think you had a third round pick. And so, next year you kind of have a reset. You're able to have more assets. Hopefully you don't trade them away, but hopefully you can have some more better draft picks because better drafts and because you'll have more draft picks.
We'll look at a team who always finds a way to have a good draft. However, we don't feel that way about them this year. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, both coming in as a C minus. Uh-oh, what happened, Howie? Well, I'll tell you, man, you look at the list here, and they reached on every player. I mean, 28th overall was my Makai Lemon rank. I was a little bit lower. He goes 20th. That's a reach. Stowers goes, 9 picks before he should. Markel Bell goes about 60 picks before he should, and everybody else is not ranked on my list. I don't know how to feel about it. Pete Dunn, I mean, you tell me how you feel about this draft.
So here's the thing. The I was having a conversation the other day. The way I kind of feel about this Makai Lemon pick, right? If the Kansas City Chiefs had the number 1 overall pick and they took Fernando Mendoza, right? Actually, we'll use a better example. The Caleb Williams draft class, right? The Kansas City Chiefs had the number 1 overall pick with Patrick Mahomes, and they took Caleb Williams. That'd be a terrible pick. It'd be an F, right? Even though Caleb Williams is, I think, obviously was a really great prospect. The Eagles, Makai Lemon is not Caleb Williams, but the Eagles drafting Makai Lemon is just a terrible fit. Caleb Williams going to the Chiefs would have been a terrible fit. This is a terrible fit for this player. I was higher on him than you were. You didn't even like him in the first place. And so it's just a bad use of draft capital, right? It's a player that I think can work in some situations, not in this receiver room, especially not with Jalen Hurts throwing him the ball, right? Eli Sowers, this pick is kind of growing on me. He's a field stretcher of a tight end with a large catch radius, which I actually think lines up really well with Jalen Hurts' skill set. Again, he's your tight end too, though. And Dallas Goedert, he's a completely different tight end prospect than Eli Sowers. Like he's a much better blocker, much better route runner. Well, Eli Sowers is just kind of a jump ball receiver with a big catch radius. And so taking that at 54 as your tight end too, not my favorite. Markel Bell, I think he's a really, he's another developmental tackle that this team needs. These tackles are getting older. This is a guy that I think can develop. But boy, they blew every pick after this. Every pick. And, I guess, I understand taking a swing on the athlete with Uar Bernard, the defensive tackle. The guy that's never played football before. It's just, I don't know how he does so good with so many of these drafts. This was a tough one though.
I think it's a calamity of errors. I'll go back to the Lemon thing. And of course, all of this kind of surrounds about AJ Brown. Is he going to be leaving? What is the deal? I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's taking so long. But we'll go back to Makai Lemon. You picked 20th overall, right? Shore went after him. That would have been a better fit. Mesidor went number 22 overall. Better fit. Malachi Lawrence, number 23 overall. Casey Concepcion, 24. And Dylan Thieneman, 25. And all those guys right after 5 players after them would have been a better fit than Makai Lemon for this Eagles team to win now. I don't get it at all. We'll move into really the depth chart where we can really see where they messed up because they did nothing. Like all these guys, obviously, and they do have a really good roster. They've always had a really good roster. None of these guys are going to make an impact year one, besides Lemon, who's going to be a scheme fit issue with Devontae Smith. They play the same basically role. You're moving Smith kind of out of that slot role to kind of fill in for this Makai Lemon thing. I just don't like it at all. Pete Dunn, how do you feel about what they did in at least free agency?
I mean, I like the Jonathan Grenard trade. I thought that was a really interesting trade. I like that they made the move for him and Tariq Woolen. I thought was an awesome signing. This is a really great position for him. So I love some of the holes that they filled on the roster down the board. Hollywood Brown, I think, could actually contribute in this room. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, could be a good, later downs pass rusher for you. Like, I actually don't mind a lot of the free agency moves. We have been really big fans of the way that this roster has been constructed for a really long time. And so we kind of have the ability to criticize this because we have always been so truthful about how we feel. The Makai Lemon pick, I just can't get over it, man. It's just a awful, awful pick. You're going to trade AJ Brown and Makai Lemon's going to be your replacement for that receiver room. It doesn't make sense to me. Like it is such I don't know. It's a terrible pick.
It's really, really bad. We'll talk about something that's really good. It's always their offensive line. Pete, walk me through the trajectory of what you see on the screen here. You loved Cam Williams last year. They selected him at that tackle spot. Now you fill in Markel Bell, maybe a Michael Morris slot. You have Fred Johnson, Miles Hilton, and Drew Kendall in this mix of backups. Let's say some of these guys get a little bit older, as they will. Lane Johnson's getting super old. How do those backups do you think they will fill for this new Eagles offensive line, if you will?
So I guess the thought process here is you took swings on really high level, high upside players in Cam Williams and Markel Bell, right? And that's kind of the thought process. Your thought process is with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata both mentoring them and the way that this organization has developed tackles, one of them is going to work. And you have filled hopefully with, really late round picks, or not really, a third round pick. And Cam Williams, I believe, was in the sixth round. And so, yeah, it says they're sixth round. Like there's the later assets, draft assets, capital wise, that you hopefully could get really good tackles with. And so I like the move. The interior offensive line is really young, and I think you were kind of happy with how they played last year. Although, hopefully they can continue to develop and take a next step this upcoming year. The offensive line's really good. Have to have a reset soon, but I think they're doing the right things for that.
I think we've been super positive on this Eagles team. Let's get a little bit more negative because I don't think people understand. A C minus is pretty bad, like
Yeah.
really bad for this team.
Yeah.
Pete Dunn will talk about his five right here.
Yeah, Markel Bell was my favorite pick here because I just liked the thought process behind it. Again, we're talking so much about draft philosophy, not necessarily the players you're getting. The draft philosophy behind taking Markel Bell is a really good one. That was a really good thought process behind that with that range, with the skill set he has athletically. The draft diamond for me, someone that I think, like you talked about, we could look down the next few years. He kind of is the only player I feel the most confident is going to be on this roster in 5 years. If you ask me and say, we talked about the lines the other day, the betting man lines. Like if I was a betting man and I had to put money on one, it'd be Ours. I wouldn't put Makai Lemon, and Markel Bell is too much of a I talked about. I like the pick. I like the philosophy. He's too much of an athlete though. There's a chance that doesn't work. And so he's the only guy that I actually feel good about. Best value, I put Makai Lemon just because of the way he was on the big board. It's still a terrible pick. I don't like it at all. Top sleeper. I'm such a sucker for these athletes that come in. It's worked for them before at the left tackle position. Picking someone that hasn't played football before. I think it could work again if they have such a good defensive tackle room, so many guys to be able to pour into him. I think that it could be fun. Year one impact, I put Makai Lemon simply because he's the only player they drafted that's going to start this year. No one else is going to start on this team this year, so I have to put Makai Lemon for that. But man, I mean, you were right. A C minus is hard. It's hard to get a C minus, especially with having the amount of picks that they had. They did like the Commanders we talked about. Like they were limited with the amount of picks they had. The Eagles weren't limited, and they just made really bad decisions.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it at all. Of course, you're talking about stretches here for our five superlatives. I don't think it's that hard to make stretches. to the point where I couldn't even put a best value. There is no best value. They reached on literally every single pick in the draft. I mean, talk about it. I talked about it in the first slide. I mean, just every pick, it was either not ranked or way before their projections. I don't like it. I do agree. Eli Stowers is going to be my favorite pick. I do think that ultimately that's probably going to be the one that kind of works the most for what this Eagles team has, except right now, there's just no outlook. You have Grant Calcutta and, of course, the guys that they have there already in Goddard. So I just don't agree with it. I will say top sleeper going to be Markel Bell. Same reasons for you. I just think that how much of an athlete he is, if they can develop him properly, which they usually do.
Yep.
I mean, he's 6'9". He's huge. Like, you're going to have to absolutely move him. Same feelings for Mekhi Lemon in the year one impact. He just has to. He's the only other guy who's going to get the ball thrown to him. I did put him as a draft diamond. Not really sure why I did that. That's probably more of the criteria. He's going to probably develop as a star over time, not with the Eagles, because after his rookie contract, he goes somewhere else. Dunn, talk to me about this Eagles team. Hopes for this season.
For this season, you should feel great because you still have a really great roster. You've developed it good for such a long time. This is absolutely still one of the best teams in the National Football League. But it's just a bad draft class, man. It's a bad draft class.
We'll just have to move on. We'll move on to the final team in this NFC East. It'll be the Dallas Cowboys. A little bit better of a draft. I gave it a B plus. I really liked, honestly, what they did. And not in terms of the value of when they got guys, but because I just think a lot of these guys are scheme specific fits. And it's weird. You do this grading system and you look at, okay, you can be picking based on obviously our overall rankings on our big boards, but everything isn't chalk like that on paper. It has to be how do they fit. And I really think that this Cowboys team fits into the mold of all the players that they took. It's going to fit into this, ultimately, this roster. Pete, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Going on a little bit of a tangent here, a lot of the hate that Joe Shane has got as the general manager of the New York Giants over the last few years has been because he's drafted good football players, but he hasn't drafted players that fit the New York Giants organization. The Dallas Cowboys drafted Cowboys this year. They made it really intentional to draft players that fit not only what they wanted to do schematically, but what they wanted to build inside that building. I really like the way they did it, and I really like this draft.
How about it, man? Caleb Downs, they didn't even have to move for him. He falls to number 11. He's a top five player on both of our big boards, the number one safety. Unreal. Malachi Lawrence could have been more of that swing. Obviously, we had him in the same range. They took him a little early, but like you said, Cowboy. It's a guy who's going to be a Cowboy. I really like Devin Moore, what he can bring later in this draft class. Of course, LT Overton. What did we say about him? Has to be a scheme-specific player. He goes to the 3-4 system. That's perfect for him, and he goes really late in terms of where he should have been and where he ultimately went. We'll move on here to this roster, if you will, and looking at what they did a lot on the defensive side of the ball in free agency. Pete, how do you feel about, let's start with, I guess, the Micah Parsons replacement as they're trying to find one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're doing their best. I think Malachi Lawrence is going to be able to provide more of that pass rush. I like the moves they made at the deadline last year. I like some of these things that they've done. I like to bring George Pickens back. I just think it's interesting. I think that this defense has to be better. I think it was tough at certain points last year, but you did a really great job at not only investing in some depth players like LT Overton, but Malachi Lawrence, I think, is going to be able to contribute faster than people think. And Caleb Downs, I truly believe, can be a Hall of Fame level safety, especially in this Cowboys system. He is someone that I don't think will ever wear another jersey for this team, and I think will be really good for them for a very long time, and that makes your defense so much better.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that stands out is this the year where the Cowboys finally won't need an interior linebacker? I feel like every single year when we do the free agency, they always need an inside linebacker. Tamari Overshown has not panned out. Obviously, James Shamar kind of on the come up a little bit. They get Deshaun Barham. They have D Winters. Hopefully, those guys can fill that need. I also look to the cornerback room. You have a bunch of guys in this cornerback room. You have Bland. Kobe Durant was the guy that they signed. Siobhan Revel from last year. Devin Moore. Pete, how do you really sort that out?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be interesting getting, I'm trying to envision where we'll be midway through the season, right? And I don't know the outlook. There's so many question marks, especially like you said, on specifically the back seven of this defense. I feel pretty good about the way that the front four is going to settle out. Again, the way those linebackers are going to be able to play together is someone going to be able to step up. I don't know. It's going to be tough to see the outlook for that team, especially that area of that defense.
Yeah, they did very little to that offense. That offensive line is always fantastic. Didn't really do anything to supplement in the wide receiver market. They got Marquise Valdez-Scantling. That's about it. We don't know the situation with George Pickens and the tag that's going on there. But we'll move on to Peyton's five superlatives.
Yeah, Caleb Downs is my favorite pick. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I've talked about him before. I think he's has the potential to be a Hall of Famer. He's my best value. He's also my year one impact. And quickly, I'll talk about my top sleeper in Overton. It's like you talked about. You nailed it earlier. I mean, this was a guy that we had talked about. Like he is literally on teams do not draft list for that if he does not a scheme specific fit for them. He went to a spot that I think can fit really well with him and that he'll be able to play this year and down the road. And so I really like the picks. I really like him and the way he could develop over the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. I really liked a guy, Devin Moore, my top sleeper, your draft diamond. I just think that the way he falls in and he's kind of rangy player that he was from Florida and he can kind of do a bunch of different things. I didn't necessarily watch him and scout him as much. Obviously, he didn't make my top 150. However, I just think this is one of those, this is a cowboy type of pick. And you look at the ultimate thing here is Caleb Downs, Caleb Downs, Caleb Downs. He's going to be the year one impact. He's my favorite pick and he's going to be the draft diamond. I think that that warrants a B plus, and I really, really, really liked what this Cowboys team did this offseason. We'll talk about LT Overton really quickly. 96 overall on my big board as a prospect, number 14th rated edge. He ends up going 18th in terms of edges taken in round five, 137. So, I mean, he goes 40 picks after he should. Unbelievable player, great scheme fit. Cowboys, man, not many people talking about him. The main storyline for me is are they going to be over or under that 9.5 win like threshold that they've been given? Pete, on after this draft, are you leaning more over or under that line?
I'm leaning more over. I feel like I like the way the receiver room has been built. I wish they would have done more to establish the running game. I know people think that they've got a good running back room. I'm still not high on it the way that other people are. And the defense, I think they took steps to make it a lot better. There's talent on every level of that defense now. Dak Prescott with an aging career. I'm gonna take the, if I had to choose a line, I would take the over on 9.5.
I think they might sneak into this playoffs. I don't know, man. I would also take the over. That'll take us in, of course, the offseason winners and losers, looking at those win totals. So we talk about Cowboys. We both will bang the over on that Cowboys team. Before we get into the other win totals, is there a true offseason winner from the NFC East?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear the Giants were the offseason winner here. Just the way that they constructed that draft. They got talent at positions that I think they needed, and got guys that are going to be in that room for a very long time.
I think, honestly, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Pete, and I think the loser is going to be the Eagles. I really liked what kind of that Giants team did, that Cowboys team did. Maybe, you can make a case for the Commanders, but they had just such a good free agency that I have to put the Eagles in front of them. How do you feel about that?
I totally agree. I would have made the exact same decision. It was such a bad draft, such a bad use of assets.
Yeah. We'll look into the win totals here. I'll ask you, Pete, on you got 10.5 on the line for this Eagles team. Are you going over or under?
Going under. I'm not going under by a lot. I think this would be a 10-7 year for the Eagles. I think that is it certainly reasonable they could go over? Absolutely, their roster is that good. I'm just not that confident Jalen Hurts is going to get better. I didn't love the season he had last year. I think the AJ Brown thing, trading him away could cause more problems than I think they're ready for. The receiver room is going to be lackluster. I would take the under on that line.
I'm going to go over. I think that this Eagles team is still a force to be reckoned with in the NFC in general. I like how they match up against some of these teams, obviously. I don't think the Giants, even though that we're going to talk about their line in a second, I think that they would sweep the Giants. I think they'll split with the Cowboys, and I think that they would honestly sweep at this Commanders team. We'll talk about the Commanders. We've talked about them before. 7.5 is the line over under. Pete, on what are you doing?
I'm taking the under on it. I think the roster's too bad. Again, we talked about it the other day. Jaden Daniels is kind of the contingency. Is he going to be healthy? If he can be healthy for a full season, it's hard to see them not winning 8 games, but the roster is just so bad. I would take the under on that line.
We just really got to hope for that free agency class to do something because I'm also going to take the under, one of the worst defenses in the NFL as of today. But let's talk about probably the most intriguing. We'll go back to the beginning. The New York Giants, 7.5. They have a fully revamped team. They have a fully revamped coaching staff. Joe Shane is still the GM in the building. They decided to fire the coaches instead of him. But P Dunn, they're at 7.5. How do you feel about that line?
Hammer the over. I think this is a team that will much reasonably go over. I think the defensive line, specifically that defense as a whole, is going to be very good. I think the offensive line is obviously going to be better. Year two of Jackson Dart. I don't know when we'll get Neighbors back. Hopefully mid-season. It seems like things are kind of slowly progressing there, but I love what they have in the running back room. I think there's enough firepower on offense. Harbaugh's going to do his thing. I think this team will win at least 8 games.
Feel the same way. I'm hammering the over on the New York Giants. One of those teams going to be very much higher on the win record than they were last year. They figured it out. They have a young core. It's going to be super cool to see. Right before we wrap up, P Dunn, give me a division outlook as of today in terms of May, late May. How you feeling about how this division will shake out?
Honestly, I think it's a little overhyped. I think there's people talking about this as one of the best divisions in football. Is it a top five division of football? I think so, maybe top six. I think in that area. But saying this is the best, I'm not there yet. I think there's a couple divisions that would very much clear this one. I don't think the talent pool is there anymore. Maybe in a few years, Jane Daniels with the better Commanders team, the Giants continuing to improve, and the Eagles doing what they're doing. Maybe right now, though, I don't think this is division is at the place it has been and as competitive as people make it out to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Eagles 1, Cowboys 2. Pretty true, obviously, to the win totals. I think that the Giants will be 3. And that Commanders team will be 4th. They will be getting a top 5 pick. You can come back, watch this video when it happens. We thank you guys so much for tuning into Division Draftables. Obviously, we're going to have all 8 episodes for every division where we go through every single division and how we feel about them post-draft. We thank you guys so much for tuning in and stay tuned for more updates.